Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Data and AI Live. Thank you again for joining us wherever you are in the world. Today, my guest is going to be Vinay Kapoor, who's Chief Product Officer at private equity-backed B2B SaaS company Expana, who've very successfully integrated a number of AI products and features into their platform, and we'll intro and get Vinay on very shortly and start the conversation. But just a few housekeeping bits to start with. We are live, so things can go wrong when you're live, and internet connections can go down, and various other things. So if anything like that happens, just bear with us. We'll endeavour to get back on track, but that's all part of the fun. And secondly, because we are live, we want it to be as interactive as possible. So please do ask any questions. If you look down below on the comments box on LinkedIn, there's an opportunity there to ask questions, as many as you wish. And me and Vinay will probably speak for about half an hour, and then the aim is to do a sort of Q&A at that point. But please don't wait until then. Any questions that come into your mind now or as we go through, please ask those questions in the comments box, and then we'll either come to them if appropriate as we're going through, or we'll definitely answer them in the end in the Q&A. So yeah, please do ask as many questions and when you wish. Let me get Vinay in. Hi Vinay, how are you?
Hi Jeremy, I am well. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed, thank you. Welcome to Data and AI Live. Thank you so much for coming on, much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
To start, I mean, just for the uninitiated, because there may be some people watching, listening who don't know who Expana are. Can you just give us an overview of Expana and the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Vinay Kapoor. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Expana. We are the world's largest IOSCO assured agri-food price reporting agency, and we are also a market intelligence platform, which means that we are a global information provider. Our portfolio includes everything from feed to food commodity prices, forecasting, cost modeling, fundamental market data across all product categories. And our customers are, some key players in the food industry. They play a crucial role in the global food supply chain, impacting the lives of individuals, communities, and entire industries. And our focus typically is on helping our customers reach the outcome that they're looking for, which is better margins and more proactivity. For more details, you can visit expanamarkets.com, and you can also look at our customer success stories to hear more about what we do.
And so when you say for all product categories, tell me or help the audience understand what you mean by that. So what are those product categories, and what kind of data is this that you hold?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way to think about it is, if you walk into a supermarket or a grocery chain or grocery store to buy your groceries, right? You'll pick up some vegetables. You might pick up some flour because you like baking. You might pick up, some steak or chicken. These are all individual food items, and we cover everything that's on the face of the planet. So everything from proteins to grains to oils, soft commodities like cocoa, coffee, sugar, as well as commodities and areas which are food related, so not necessarily fruit. So think about plastic in which food is packaged, aluminium in which aluminium tin cans, for example, etc. And we do more than just prices, right? We provide forecasting, etc. And we do this on a global level. So from every country that it is sourced. A number of these are proprietary, which means we are a benchmark and the only source for a lot of this information.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks for that. So let's get into kind of Expana's AI journey then. Probably the best place to start with this is the start. So talk me through from conception, so when you started this process and what those initial conversations looked like.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to sort of add to the context, my background is in data and AI and machine learning, which is why As soon as I joined the business, which was about 2.5 years ago as the chief product officer, one of the things I noticed at Expana was the depth and the breadth of proprietary data, which meant that we were sitting on a gold mine. And if you work with AI and machine learning, and we'll get into Gen AI in a minute, but
Mm,
think about sort of traditional AI and machine learning models and building these models that can achieve certain tasks. That is unparalleled. So from day one, I was looking at the data assets and looking at our customer problems and thinking about how could we solve it. Then in 2024, we started the journey of looking at how we could leverage AI. And the reason was, we started with the why. So we didn't start with, oh, here's a technology named AI. Let's think about how we can take it to market. But we ran into some customer problems that we could not solve effectively using traditional technologies. And AI presented a really good path for solving them in both a unique manner and a cost effective manner. So we started there and did a little bit of analysis and research, and we can get into more details of what we did, how we did it, but really
mm.
spent a lot of time preparing the ground and answering the why first. Once we
Well,
knew, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I mean, let's get into that, what the why was and what were the challenges. But actually, I just wanted to kind of interject and ask you before that. So, when you joined Expana, so the people that are listening that may be in your position or maybe looking for new, when you joined Expana, what was it about the data set? And I'm paraphrasing here, but I think you used words that it was a gold mine. I think. What led you? What were the things that led you to understand that when you were looking at joining the
Yeah,
business potentially,
yeah.
and why is it so uniquely powerful, the Expana data set?
So I'll give you a few examples. One example I would like to quote is coffee. We have people on the ground that visit coffee plantations, the largest ones, which means that we have global coverage on coffee data across the world. And they are literally every other week, they go once every other week to these farms, and they are looking at the quality of the crop. So they are measuring the size of the pod, they are measuring the density, they are measuring rainfall, right? How much rainfall happened, they are monitoring that in real time. And they're producing all of this information. You can't find that information anywhere unless you have people that have boots on the ground. There are many examples like this. We have some benchmark data in the US where we are the benchmark for certain proteins. Similarly, we have benchmarks in Europe in certain categories like dairy. So we are monitoring a lot of information across fundamentals, supply, demand, pricing, forecasting, which produces this asset that can help you answer the question of what's happening, what's likely to happen, and why. And all of that in a proprietary data set, right? That you cannot find anywhere else. So
Yeah,
that's what attracted me to the what can we do with this?
yeah, great stuff. That's really exciting. Um, and so sorry to, I know we went off on a segue, but I thought it's an interesting thing actually. Um,
Absolutely.
But in terms of, so the why, then let's get back to that. And you rightly said, don't start with AI. We can start with the why and the business challenges. So what were those business challenges? What was the why?
Yeah. And there's a few things that we noticed early on which our customers were struggling with that we wanted to sort of find good solutions for. One of the things that we noticed was that there's a lot of information. So if you're using Expana and our platform, we have something like 35,000 time series. Each time series, think of a time series as an example would be wheat from a certain region in the US, right? That's one time series. So there would be maybe 20 different time series that just represent wheat from the US. And so our customers typically ask a lot of questions of themselves, such as, what is the right data I should be using for my analysis? So if you are a buyer of certain commodities and you are going to close contracts on certain commodities, you want to know where should you source that from, what and what does that look like, what's the right price, and you want to pick the right time series. That's one challenge we noticed. The other challenges we noticed was a lot of our customers build what is known as a cost model, which means that let's take the example. Let's say you're a supermarket and you're putting a cake on the shelf in your bakery section every morning. That cake is essentially a SKU, right? It's a unit that is that is represented by a number of items that go into the cake. So it's flour, sugar, the plastic that it's put inside, energy that's used to bake it, labor of the person who's baking it, maybe transportation. All of that is represented in what is known as a cost model. And a lot of our users in this day and age are people who don't have background in commodities, but they need to be able to build these cost models to be able to control what's happening with their margins. So how do you get a user who has no background in these commodities to a point where they are empowered to build these cost models? So it's how to get them started. These are just two examples of many different problems that we found where, yes, there were traditional user interface and design solutions available. But what's interesting is that we could find some very interesting solutions for these using AI. So these are just two examples of the why, and I can quote 20 more that we found, which our customers were struggling with. So it came down to one simple question and one only, which is how do I make my users' life easier, and how do I get them to do what they want to do without having to wrangle with too much data?
Yeah, yeah. And so once you got to that point, and established that AI solutions were going to be optimal, tell us about some of those AI solutions that you built,
Yeah.
and kind of why you decided on certain solutions in those instances.
Yeah, and I'll answer that in the other order, actually. So I'll answer the why we picked the ones we picked, and then I'll go into details of a couple of solutions that we've gone to market with, and a couple of those that we are going to market with very soon. So the way we did this is we first looked at all of the problems that we had and we stack ranked them and looked at impact. So we measured the impact of every problem by talking to users, by doing a combination of qualitative and quantitative user research. So again, if you're a product leader listening to this, right, that need for qualitative and quantitative research is still there, and we stack rank the problems. And then once we had, 6 or 7 different problems that we wanted to really focus on, then we did a little bit of discovery, prototyping in some of these areas, did a little bit of design. So a few next steps with very little spend. And that's the beauty of AI, which we can get into as another, like it's a real force multiplier. So we were able to do a lot of this prototyping by using AI and build things to go out and test in the market very quickly at very low cost, which would have been its own cycle, but I digress. So we were able to then draw up this matrix of impact and effort, and then having a conversation with our go-to-market team and customers to see which ones would sort of customers want to try out first, which would really solve the real challenges. So it was a conversation and a multifaceted approach.
So
It
there's a lot of rigor that goes into that
was a
validation piece, is the message by the sound of
Yeah,
it.
exactly. There's a lot of rigor, and I think a lot of mistakes people make and are making with AI is jumping headfirst into the solution and trying to get something out of the market very quickly without doing the homework. There's a study that came out of the MIT, which I think all of us would have seen by now, but it said something like 95% of all POCs in the Gen AI space and AI space right now don't see the light of the day and don't go into production, and that's because a lot of people are throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. And you can save yourselves a lot of time, money, pain, blood, and sweat by just doing a little bit more of the traditional product driven homework, which is why should we do this? And what's the outcome? What's the ROI? So that's sort of
Yep.
how we did it. Then a couple of areas that we landed on, we have our solutions, the AI solutions, built under the umbrella of what we call Expana IQ. The way I like to describe Expana IQ is it is that smart brain that's sitting amongst all of our data and expert intelligence. Our intelligence within the business is not just the data that we have, whether it's our proprietary data or curated third party data. We have some of the world's best experts on commodities who work as analysts. So, the person who's writing our grains report or wheat report is one of the best experts out there, which you will sometimes see them quoted in the news. Same with coffee, cocoa, sugar, oils, etc. So it's important to not just focus on the data, but also focus on the human intelligence. And I prefer to use the term augmented intelligence because what Expana IQ does is it's that brain that's sitting in the middle of all of this, and it's extrapolating and augmenting that information. It's not replacing that analysis. So under the umbrella of Expana IQ, one of the first things that we got out the door, and we're talking about customer facing products, right? We can also talk about internal things that we've done. But one of the first customer facing things that we've done is, go out the door with a cost model builder. So I talked about that problem that we identified earlier, right? A lot of our users want to build that cost model. You want to go out and build a cost model for a cake. If you don't have 15 years of experience baking cakes or buying cake related commodities, well, we have a chatbot that you can work with, and it is a multi-agentic chatbot, which means that there are multiple agents that do specific individual tasks. But for the user, the experience is I am now having a conversation with a proprietary data set, which is hosted in our own environment. So we are not sending this data to a third-party super vendor or a frontier lab that's sitting in a secure environment, and you are able to have that conversation and say, I want to build a cost model for a cake, and I want to source most of my ingredients from Europe, and I want to make sure that we use organic wheat, and I only want to use olive oil, things like that. You can see how much I know about baking, but you see, so that's the first experience, and it's received tremendous feedback. It's in the market, people are using it because it's cut down the time to value for our user. Instead of spending what would literally take somebody weeks to build a cost model, because they would have to go through the data, they would have to talk to someone who's an expert in the organization, build a recipe. They have a starting template, and they
Mm.
still want to have the conversation internally, but they have a starting point, right? So that's one of the first things we build. We are also working on traditional AI models, so it's not just all Gen AI. We've also gone to market with some proactive forecasting, which is more algorithmic and AI in nature. So building more of the machine learning models, etc. So that's sort of some examples of things that we've done.
So this cost model thing is really fascinating, by the way, and you can see how that'd be really valuable. So, am I right in saying this is a sort of GPT style interface that
Yeah,
customers can interact with in a completely customizable way? I
that's
mean,
correct.
in terms of the questions they ask,
That's correct.
and presumably is that as well, because you mentioned the example previously. Presumably, if you're, I don't know, a big um, food buyer of some kind, and you're going to make a new product, you want to do that cost model, and previously it would take X amount of weeks. Is there an element with this that it's more accurate as well, given the historic data that it's trained on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what the way I like to describe it is it's not just the accuracy of the recipe, because in a lot of organizations, the recipe will be dictated by what is a new product development team, etc. So you might already have a recipe. So the AI agent will actually suggest a recipe. So it tells you here are the ingredients, here is the percentage, and it's actually pretty cool because I've done some customer demos with some fairly large organizations, Fortune 100 companies, and we've said, okay, let's build a recipe for this product that you have on the shelf, and it's pretty cool to watch their reaction because it nails it, right? Obviously, it doesn't know all the details because these recipes are proprietary, but it gets pretty close. So that is a big part of it. But the other, and I would say equally, if not more important part of it is once you have the recipe, you need to source the right ingredients. So if we take the example of a cake, well, how do you know what's the price of flour? You need to pick the right series and the right data to know that you're building a trustworthy cost model. Because if your cost model uses a price that is not trustworthy, your cost model is useless. It's going to give you insights that are just made up. So equally important is then, and where our models really shine is after you build the recipe, then they go ahead and suggest high quality time series that are completely proprietary. And you know that when you've built that whole package, you go and present it to your CEO and say, we have a margin problem and we can't raise the price of our cake, but we suggest that we pick flour from a different region because the flour that we are buying is going to get expensive. That insight you can uniquely get from our proprietary data set. And
Yeah,
that's where it really also shines.
yeah, yeah, fantastic. And coming from a like a layman's perspective, okay, and this might sound like a really silly question, but I'm thinking there's probably lots of other software businesses out there who are now thinking, well, we've got a potentially uniquely powerful data set, and this kind of chatbot style interactive type of product, well, maybe that's something we can build. But my question is, and you make it sound really simple. I'm sure it wasn't. But what are the challenges? When you've got a uniquely powerful data set like you have, and maybe like other firms have, what are the challenges then in terms of using that data and training a proprietary chatbot like this?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. It's not as simple as, just let's just throw some prompts at the LLM and off we go. By the way, if your product strategy relies on just throwing prompts on a GPT and then getting it out the market, you don't have a moat, right? So you really need to nail down how your solution is unique and what unique problems it solves. So in our case, some of the and I'll generalize the challenges, right? First of all, when you think of AI, think of just like we have people's hierarchy of needs, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. AI has a hierarchy of needs. And at the bottom of the hierarchy of needs for a good AI solution is what we discussed earlier, is a strong why, right? Why are we doing this? But then right after that is the next challenge, which is data. It's great that you have proprietary data. If you don't have proprietary data, then slightly different challenge. But if you do have proprietary data, then the next challenge is going to be that you need to make sure that that data is available to the AI in a manner where it is mined. So, for example, making sure that the data is not sitting in silos, it's structured, it's maybe in a RAG. In some way, shape, or form, you've done the hard work that's required to actually cleanse the data and make it available in a format where and form, not format, but in a form where AI can actually find trustworthy information. Because if you're feeding garbage data, you'll get garbage out, and you don't want to go to market with a solution that's just slapped on top of bad data. It AI is an amplifier. It'll amplify good things. It'll also amplify bad things, and that goes for Gen AI and traditional AI. So that's one challenge. Make sure that your data landscape is robust, and make sure that you're investing in that. You don't get away from that. Then the second challenge, especially for somebody like us, is that we are a player in a market where trust is extremely important. We are telling our customers what the price of certain commodities is. We are projecting what the price is going to be through our forecast. We're helping them build cost models. People make billion-dollar decisions based on our data, so that trustworthiness is important. So how to ensure and balance the fact that AI hallucinates with the need for that trust. And we have some solutions for that. How we ensure that there is an approach to ensure that the hallucination is limited. We give a very very clear task to the AI, and we control the output in a manner that there is a high degree of trust, and ensure that at any given time the AI is showing is homework. So if you see the output, you can also dig into why the output is what it is. That's the other challenge, right? So balancing, I would say those two are the main challenges. The third challenge is finding the right people, right? It's very important that you invest in a skill set, whether it's data or AI skill set, for people who can actually rapidly prototype.
Yeah. Well, that piece. Let's come on to that shortly. But I just want to, because that's again a key component. But I just want to come back to something you said about making sure the data landscape is robust. So, to what extent? Because there's going to be different businesses are going to have different levels of maturity around their data estate. So, what was your experience with Expana? To what extent did you need to develop that robustness or not? What did you find when you joined?
So we just a little bit of history of Expana is that we are a combination of what used to be five different businesses and five different products and five very different data landscapes. And I'll not go into that, but think of them as they were five silos, more or less, when I joined. And if you read a little bit more about the history of the company, we have a 200-year-old history. One of the businesses actually started in the 1800s, believe it or not. So we have a time series that goes quite far back.
So do
So
you have data from
we do.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It used to be traded under the name Arnaberry in the US, and that history is fantastic. But the challenge we had was, how do we make sure that our customers can get insights? And this is not an AI challenge. This is a product challenge. How do we make sure that customers can get value and insights from everything? So if you go back to that example of a cake, right? You not only want to know what's happening with flour, you also want to know what's happening with plastic. And a lot of this data set these data sets were sitting in silos. So bringing that together was anyways, day zero for us. And we were fortunate enough that we were able to start on that journey early on. So one of the first things I did landing in the organization was really to start building a common and consistent data set in a data lake house and bring it all together. And then building the AI solutions on top of that just became that much easier because all of that data was sitting in a single landscape. Having said that,
Mm,
you don't have to go that far, but it's worth having a data strategy that allows you to think of your data holistically.
yeah. And one other thing actually, that's only because it's a question I hear a lot and a challenge I hear a lot for people in your position, is any tips on getting product data engineering working together effectively, um, from a sort of structure management point of view? Because I know that's pretty crucial to
Yeah.
being successful in this kind of area.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the idea of being, you know, on a mission and not being mercenaries, so being missionaries and not mercenaries is very important. And it goes back to the one thing that I said earlier, which I keep harping in all my conversations, which is start with the why. It's so important because it makes it so much easier to have a holistic conversation rather than starting with the solution. A lot of times people have a solution that's looking for a problem. Start with the real problem that a user or a customer has, and it's so much easier to align. Okay, we want to cut time to value for somebody who builds a cost model. Well, that's an outcome, right? Can we take them from a week to an hour or a minute? And that's an outcome which then you can uniquely position and align towards and bring the leadership together, bring the organization together and say, how do we solve this problem? Let's talk about it. It just makes that job easier. The other thing I would say is making sure and recognizing that the investment in data and skill set is hand in hand with your discovery work, so that one leg of the stool is not far ahead of the other leg, so you don't have a balance. So as product, I've gone and created a lot of excitement in the market for a solution. We don't have the data, we don't have the skill set. Well, that's going to cause friction. So it's important to sort of make sure that you're investing in these appropriately. You don't want, and again, you don't want the other end of the spectrum. We've got 20 engineers sitting now, we don't know what we're going to do, right? So it's that art of balancing these.
Yeah, great. Well, let's get back to that piece around skill set then, because with these things, I guess to stay on your analogy, this is the sort of the final ingredient of the cake when you're building these products. So, um, in your experience, and I guess let's start maybe with the focus, your experience at Expana, and then maybe we can talk more widely. But in your experience at Expana, what were the skills that you found that were needed to build these products? And were those skills just on the AI piece, or were there sort of fundamental data management skills needed as well at the start?
Yeah, so we were very fortunate that as in when I joined the organization, we had a very mature data landscape and team that was already engaged. So if you don't have that, that's an area you want to invest in. But we had under chief data officer, who's my peer, we had a very mature data team. Now, of course, there were skill gaps which we identified and we worked on them. So moving from legacy data platforms, traditional data platforms, which are SQL based, to more sort of modern technologies. Think of data lake houses without going into details of the vendors, right? That's just a skill gap, and people can work through that. And we, of course, needed to go out and hire some skill for that, but that was less of a challenge. I think the challenge which we addressed, and a lot of people have to address, is once you've addressed the data challenge, then you want to make sure that you bring in a couple of key resources who can lead the AI effort and have that background in AI. And it's somebody who has the ability to a surface the problems, and then b visualize what potential solutions will look like, quickly prototype on the product side and engineering side. So having a lead AI PM who's got experience building AI solutions, getting them out to market, and then a lead AI engineer or a principal AI engineer similar is important. And you don't need a large team these days, because again, AI has made it easier to get AI solutions out the door. So the bar is lower, which means companies like us don't need to be like Google with 5,000, 10,000 machine learning engineers. But you do need a couple of key people. And the reason for that is uh, AI engineers and AI PMs have this unique skill set where they understand how to get close to the data, and they understand rapid prototyping. And the third most important thing is the field is changing so fast, they know how to stay up to date with what's happening the latest, right? So that's sort of the PM and the principal engineer were one of the first skill sets we invested in.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the AI PM then, just quickly on that first. And you said sort of their role involves scoping the problems, but then also the ability to visualize the solutions. How do you spot that in a candidate? And in your experience, what avenues do those people tend to come from?
Yeah, yeah. And keep in mind that there's nobody out there who's got like 10 years of experience with Gen AI. So when you're talking about AI, we're talking about Gen AI and traditional AI. And one of the first things that I look for when I'm hiring, especially on the product side, a candidate is who has experience bringing AI products to market, right? And it could be a traditional AI. Like, did you ship a machine learning model? Did you solve a segmentation problem? Did you solve a problem of upsell or churn? And what solution did you bring to market? How did you solve it? And were you able to find data that was unique to the organization to solve that problem? So they almost have to be able to speak the user's language. But even more important for an AI PM is to be able to get comfortable with data and data engineering a little bit, because now you can do a lot of vibe coding, but in the past you might have to build a machine learning model very quickly using some prototyping tools along with your AI engineer, and then say, okay, you know what, this is the right model. These days, you're using vibe coding for a lot of that. So we're looking for sort of that person, and then now also looking for some Gen AI experience. So have you prototyped? Have you done a POC? What was the POC like? Do you have the ability to look at different agents? How do you pick the right model for the different problems? These are the kind of things that we look for. And then prototyping is so important, and that's becoming a general PM skill set now, not just AI PM. Can you look at can you use V0 to build a prototype and then host it on Vercel and quickly prototype and then go to market? So that's sort of on the PM side, some things I look for.
Yeah. And on the engineer side, is it similar, or are there any sort of slight nuances for that role, which I guess is more of a hands-on builder?
Yeah, more hands-on experience. So, really a deep background in data and AI and machine learning models, and recently more sort of working through again Gen AI, building agentic workflows. I feel like there are trends in AI as well, Gen AI. So you had sort of 2024 was the year of GPTs. 2025 was the year of the multi-agentic approach. 2026, it looks like will be the year of MCP servers. So, sort of making sure that a person has had at least some exposure or has, an inclination to learn about these things is important, but a deeper skill set for sure.
Yeah. And another important piece of this for businesses hiring, in my experience, is and actually quickly just before we get on to this, we've already gone over time, which is typical with these things. So any questions or queries, please get them in the comments box now, because Vinay and I are only going to talk for a little bit longer now. But just the piece on the talent as and the skill sets as well. anything in your experience that a company who is looking to hire for these kind of roles can and should do in how they communicate to the candidate pool to give themselves the best chance of getting engagement from that candidate pool in these roles? Because in my experience, that's kind of an important thing, because they are in vogue roles at the moment. The talent pool is small, so you kind of need to try and appeal to what interests these folks. So
Yeah.
any sort of tips or tricks or experience there?
Yeah, and I will say long and short of it is make your intentions clear and what you're looking for, because you'll get very different candidates based on what you want to do. So, as an example, if you're looking to build internal efficiency tools and productivity tools, so if you're an organization who's looking to deploy AI for internal productivity improvements, make that clear, because the kind of person you want then is somebody who's done that and has a lot of experience with workflows. Or you might want somebody who can rapidly prototype. So you want to find someone who has the experience of building 5 prototypes, validating them with market, building an ROI business case for presentation to the board, and then hiring a team that can then go ahead and build that solution. Make that clear. Again, very different skill set, very different person. Maybe you are a very large enterprise who's going to deploy a model that is going to be used by millions of people and help them do something very specific. Make that clear to the extent you can, because again, very different skill set of somebody who has experience with tool chains and deployments and ML ops and so on and so forth. So these are just, I mean, I just picked 3 random examples, right? But make sure
Mm.
you think through that and make that clear, because very different people are motivated by very different things. And somebody who's got experience building ML models or Gen AI solutions that are used by millions of people may not be motivated by that internal workflow problem. Whereas the opposite is true. Somebody who has a lot of experience automating workflows might be overwhelmed if you tell them that you're going to put them in an environment where they're responsible for a production system which will run 24/7 for a million people.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, and it's something that's pretty prevalent, because I think most communication around roles in this space, they do lack clarity. I don't know why that. Why do you think that is? I'm not quite sure actually, but you're right. I mean, it is an absolute trend.
Yeah, and I have a hypothesis, which is unfortunately what's happening in the market is, as we all know, AI has become a bit of a buzzword. One of the things that I used to joke before Gen AI was machine learning is written in Python, AI is written in PowerPoint, right? So it's become a bit of a buzzword, and a lot of people are just trying to get competence and skill set in the door with the right intention. That is becoming harder and harder. But given that a lot of thinking and homework hasn't gotten into it, you're chasing a skill set and a technology as opposed to a solution to a problem. So a lot of recs, I see when I'm also an advisor to a few companies, and I see them writing recs which will write things like experience with XGPT model or Python or this and that, and I'm like, well, okay, you'll get a developer in, but do you know if they fit the problem that you're trying to solve? So why not be upfront about that? So I think asking that question, just give yourself just 10 minutes and think about the problem.
I think it's such important advice actually, because you're so right. If you don't be really clear about what you're trying to solve for, it's a temperament thing. You will get someone that's going to be more interested in internal products and workflows, as you say, versus a customer facing product. There is a real temperamental
Yeah.
difference there, and yeah, I think it's a great piece of advice. Vinay, thank you so much. We've run out of time, I'm afraid, but this has been a fascinating deep dive into what you've done and achieved at Expana. Thank you so much for this. Where can, if people want to, having listened to this, want to reach out to you or Expana, what's the best way of doing that? Where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for a very engaging conversation. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Such an important topic, such a bright future, in this industry, and the technology in general. You can reach me on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Vinay Kapoor. You can also reach out to us at Expana. Expanamarkets.com is where you find us. Easy. There are some client stories of some customers that we've served, and you can request a demo, which is available if you want to try out our product. And look forward to the conversation.
Great stuff. Yeah, everyone reach out to Vinay. Look forward to future success. I've enjoyed it as well. Maybe in a year we can come back and do sort of Mark 2 and see where you've got to at that stage. But
You bet. Look forward to it. Thank you,
great
everyone.
stuff. Thanks, Vinay. Bye-bye.